Hello.
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 Good evening, everybody.
That maybe give me another, figure out what's going on. Okay, and also, I'm on the way, so please leave me a message and I'll call you right back. If I won't, okay, you'll text me, but then I won't. Okay, text me, I'll try to do my text, okay. Okay, very good, okay, thank you, bye.
I think we're on 35.
Oh,
Huh?
Do you have a book?
yes,
The marker.
Ernie, do you have a book?
Yeah, Susan's
What
on
number?
19.
Put it in 31, I don't know why, maybe in Facebook.
no, we finished 34 last week.
Right,
Okay,
35.
so 35.
Yeah, we talked about the fourths.
Fine, it's already gonna be Labor Day Monday.
We're on page 35.
It's not deep.
No, I have a full drink.
You're drinking?
We're in we're in Hilchos Borer, page 35, removing solid items from liquids. One question related to the discussion of how to define a mixture is whether removing an insect or other small waste from liquid is permitted on Shabbos. Various factors are raised by the poskim regarding this question. The Mahari Tatz writes that removing the insect is permitted, as borer by removing waste from food does not apply to liquid. With liquids, the only form of borer that is prohibited is known as meshamer, filtering, and involves using a filter to collect waste while the pure liquid accumulates underneath. So maybe that's Yaakov and Haila. 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
It's good. 1 second, everybody. The Yellens are here, so they're.
And that's just me tonight. Hello, good evening. Good evening.
Yaakov,
Thank you.
there's no charge for the 19. If you have $3, you can give that back because you gave me 17 last week.
How come? I mean,
Because they're not charging us for it
oh,
this
wow.
time.
What-
They said, well, they just said because our chabura is very, very productive chabura. Our people of our chabura have sponsored it a few times. So they said, so that's good.
Yes. Yeah. Very nice.
Mario,
Thank you.
Yeah,
did you pay me $17 for the, okay, so
yeah,
I owe it to you back as well.
Okay, all right.
I'm busy distributing all of my God back.
He wants to. No, I don't want anything.
So we're on page 35.
Mm,
We're talking about taking a fly out of the soup. So removing solids from food. Is that Hilo? Okay, maybe that's Harold. Susie, give Harold 19, which is over there in the on the stairway. Yes, Harold. Okay. Okay, so we have a big crowd here today, like the old days. You were not with us, but we used to gather, we used to have our group here.
Hello, Harold.
Hey, Harold, pre-COVID?
Yeah. We started this, I think, in 2018. Here, we have, and there's no cost for it, Harold. There's no, yeah.
Thank you.
There's a business.
Guys, yeah.
From an email.
Thank you. Well, no ice, that's,
And
you
it's
know.
decaffeinated.
Oh. Only this.
So we've been dealing with, when you're not allowed to remove waste, the psoilus from the oichel. You can take the oichel and leave the psoilus behind. Oh, here's George. Yep. Now we're learning that the isser is only by solids, not by liquids. So for example, if you remove a waste product from a liquid, it's not borer. The only time it's borer is if you filter it. If you pour the liquid through a filter to catch the impurities, so that's prohibited. Hatam shenir lanias daiti lahatir b'tzira. These are the chuvas of the Maritatz. I believe the Maritatz is a Rishon. He says the reason I permit removing a wasp from liquid is dafka b'mishum de'ein derech meshamer b'kach. Meshamer is filtering, and filtering means you have a filter and you pour the liquid through the filter. Dabalach shach meshamer. There is no borer by lach, by liquid. It's the separating good from bad for liquid is called meshamer. And then biyavesh, separating psoilus from oichel by dry, that's called borer. Avalein bor belach. Vein meshamer biyavesh. So, for example, if you had like, I'm thinking about like grains, which is dry, and there were some impurities there, and you had like a filter, and you and you pour it through there. I guess he wants to say in meshamer biyavesh. Somebody who removes a wasp from wine, ain't derech breira belach. That's not breira. Elishimur shianiach hayad b'misanen is pouring wine through a filter. Umotzias hayayin, and you let the wine drop down. It collects the sediments. That's an isser. Aval in bira belach. But if you removed waste from the liquid, shu nidin didan, which is our case of removing a fly, shabor biyadu atzira, that you remove the wasp with your hand, he says it doesn't fall under bar. Which is a compilation of customs and laws, many of which are Kabbalistic in origin, of disputed authorship, published in the 18th century, quotes this ruling of the Maharitats and adds another reason to be lenient. He explains that borer only applies when it is necessary to search for the waste, when you have to search for the waste that one wishes to remove. An insect which floats to the top of a liquid is already considered separate from the liquid, so borer is not relevant. Shenoiflim zvuvim or yetushim, if flies or mosquitoes fall into wine or water, yain or b'mayim, yachol lasir mitochim, you can remove them. Ve'ein bo mishum breira kasher ela ha-maritats, the Rit Sahalon, B'tshuva, because of ein breira belach, and he wrote that breira doesn't exist by liquids. Begamis atzira yishalach, and then you can get rid of the wasp. The ode, The lo shach breil b'mashet tzarach lepashpeish to live for. Borer applies when you have to sort of search for something and then remove it. Aval davar shetzaf lamala, but something sort of floats to the top on its own for borer. So it selected itself. Ve'ein ze borer. You didn't do it. The second reason is related to the principle we learned in the previous section, that borer only applies to a mixture. According to Chemdes Hayomim, since a light, solid item like a fly that floated to the top, right, inside a liquid will eventually float to the top, it's not really a mixture, and therefore borer is not relevant. It's already, they're separate. However, the Taz writes that borer does apply to flies that fell into a liquid, and one may not remove them alone. The solution he provides is to remove the insect together with some of the liquid, as this does not constitute borer. Ayin mashakasu b'simen tav kuvav de la Ravid yesh iser k'shenoif l'mzuvim lakos. He quotes the Ravid that it is prohibited to remove a fly. Shlo yotze azvuvim levadan min hakos, and therefore don't just pick the fly up by its wing. Take a spoon with a little of the soup or the liquid with it, and by doing that, the havale kibor psoiles eliyikach v'namashke tzasimam. If you take the fly itself, that would be bor because you're removing the psoiles. He doesn't seem to hold like the Mari Tats that bor doesn't apply to liquids. He rejects that whole thing, perhaps because the Ravid rejected it. Now the Ba'er Heitev quotes the Mari Tats and the Taz. He also cites the Yad Aaron, who writes that the leniency of the Maritat is unconvincing, and therefore the Mishnah Berurah rules stringently in accordance with the Taz. The Ravid is quoted and explained at length by the Taz in Hilchos Yontif regarding a dispute as to when bor is prohibited and permitted on Yontif. The Pri Megadim expresses surprise at the need to quote the Ravid regarding Hilchos Shabbos, as on Shabbos morning waste from food is prohibited according to all. 17, the Chazon Ish questions how removing some of the liquid together with the insect avoids a violation of borer, as he feels that removing waste from food is usually prohibited even if one also removes some of the food. He explains that the case of the insect and liquid is different, as the Chemdes Yomim is essentially right, that it's not considered a mixture at all. The Taz is only concerned that the part of the liquid in direct contact with the insect and between its wings may be considered mixed with the insect, and therefore he prohibits removing the insect alone. This problem can be avoided by removing this small amount of liquid together with the insect. This dispute between the Mishnah Berurah and the Chazon Ish has many halachic ramifications. For example, one who wishes to remove a dirty or burnt portion of a larger piece of food may do so by removing a small part of the rest of the food according to Mishnah Berurah, while according to Chazon Ish, he must remove the entire mixture of the portion one wishes to dispose of together with the surrounding area. The Bir Halacha explains that it's difficult to be lenient in this regard, as almost all Achronim quote the Taz as halacha, and there's potentially a biblical malacha involved, so that's why the Mishnah Berurah is noted to be stringent. However, Rav Ovadia Yosef rules leniently in accordance to the Mari Tats. He writes that although it is good to be stringent in line with the ruling of the Mishnah Berurah, one who wishes to rely on the lenient positions may do so. He quotes many Achronim who also rule leniently, refuting the contention of the Bir Halacha quoted in our previous footnote that virtually all the Achronim are machmir. Says Rav Ovadia, Kos Yain Shenafel Bo Zvuz Utzira, a fly or a wasp fell into a glass of wine. Mutar Lasiro, you can remove it. Biyado, with your hand, or al yedei kapid, or with a spoon. Ki ein derech b'rer balach. He's quoting the Mari Tats, right? Ela mishamer balach u'ber biyavish. Ein kan beis mechosh. There's nothing to be worried about. Shein derech b'rer balach. B'rer doesn't apply to liquids. V'games atzira yishala. And you may cast away the wasp. V'yesh cholkin, the oisrin, right? He's referring to the Taz, Mishnah Berurah, la'asir tazvuv v'ado. It's like you're removing the waste. You should use a spoon. Can you take some of the liquid? So he says, if you can be machmir, it's good. If you want to be leniently, you have somebody to rely on. Even many of the Achronim, who follow the stricter ruling of the Taz, accept that large solid items inside a liquid often do not constitute a mixture, and the Shvita Shabbos makes this point explicitly in the source below. Im naflus vuvim lakos. If a fly fell into a cup, lo yotzei zuvim levadam, don't remove the fly by itself. Shareza kibor psoilus me'ochel. It's like removing the watermelon seed from the watermelon. Sha'aser. Afil k'dei lechol miyad, if you want to eat it right away. Ragicha kach gam me'amashke k'tzat imoan. When you remove the fly, take some of the liquid. Sha'azei near kibor.
Is that why seedless watermelon was invented? They're from Israel, didn't they, create that?
That's interesting. Harold is saying that seedless watermelon may have been invented in Israel to avoid the problem of borer. It's only by flies and small items like it that you have to remove the liquid with it. Because they sink, they're mixed with the liquid. Big items on ikorim, k'mor basar amunach beroitiv, or like a piece of meat in the soup, or yirakos like lushim b'tzir. Lo matzinu sheyeben itilasan mamashke yisur breira. Nobody's ever said that taking a piece of meat out of the liquid, that's a problem with breira. The Orcha Shabbos followed this approach as well. He rules in accordance with the Taz, but in the preceding halach he rules leniently that pickled cucumbers are not considered mixed with the water in which they are kept. Melafafonim chamutzim. Right? You open up
Jar of pickles.
a jar of pickles. It's sitting in liquid. So you want to say removing that solid pickle from the liquid is not a problem with borer. Einam begetter terul, because it's not a mixture. We've learned that borer really only applies to mixtures. A solid with a liquid, it's not a mixture. Imamayim shebakusa. The Orcha Shabbos also permits removing a tea bag from a cup of tea, provided that one does not shake out the liquid inside it or leave it to drip into the cup. It's only the liquid in and on the surface of the tea bag is considered mixed with the tea bag, in accordance with the rationale of the Chazon Ish. Osur l'nayar the sakit la'achar tziyah. You should not shake the tea bag after you remove it. Ola shasoba avir, or let it dangle in the air above the cup. So that the essence that is in the tea bag should drip. Dahavi borer. V'meino masha sakit. But if you're not dangling it, just remove it. Hareze mutter. Avshemenat fos tipos metoch sakit. Even though there's a few drops, kiven shas sinon nasa me'elot. Because if you're not doing the filtering happens by itself.
So you see the tea bag almost like a sieve. As the water comes out, right, the solid stays in.
39. Peeling and detaching parts of food. Does the malach of borer include peeling fruits and vegetables? The peel and the fruit or vegetable inside are certainly located in close proximity to each other, but do the food and waste of the same food that are attached to each other qualify as a mixture? In this section, we will see that many sources discuss this question, and the answer is not so straightforward. The Gemara Masechta Be'er concludes that peeling grains of barley on Shabbos is permitted. HaMekalif so'orim, you peel barley. Mekalif achas v'yochel. You can peel each one and eat it as you peel. V'im kolav v'nosan toch yado chai. However, if you peeled and placed several of them in your hand, that's borer, and bichayv for malach on Shabbos. Amar Belezer v'chein l'Shabbos.
It's like sunflower seeds?
No, barley. Says I guess there were grains of barley that were. This is without tithing, without giving meiser. See, meiser is if you're like snacking, you don't have to give meiser. But if it's a kviyas suda, so what he says is by peeling it and gathering it in your hand. So now that's not just a snack. Like if you're in your field and you have plums and you pluck, you don't have to give meiser on that. It's like it's like a achilas aroy. Then he says v'chein l'Shabbos. That is, this applies to Shabbos. You could peel and eat, but if you peel and gather, that would be a problem. Whereas Zani, it's not so. Rav mekafelet visukasi. Rav's wife peeled barley for him by the cupful. kasi kasi. Rav Chia makafaled visu kasi kasi. Rav Chia's wife did the same thing. Ele itmar seifa itmar. So Rabbi Elazar's comment was on the latter part of the Mishnah, which is not referential to us. It comes out that you can peel this barley, and it's not borer. The Gemara here clearly assumes that peeling barley is permitted, but it does not explain why peeling barley grains is not considered borer. Elsewhere, Rabbeinu Chananel is one of the Rishonim that in many Masechtas appear on the side of the Masechta. Rabbi Chananel writes that borer applies only to items that are mixed together without being attached. He adds explicitly, for this reason, borer does not apply to peeling. Although the malach of dash may apply if the fruit is not yet ready to eat and will require sorting first. Hadash hu hamafarik hapsolis hamachubaris ba'oichel. So dash is when you separate waste that's actually attached to food, umechinoson lebreira or bezria or baharkoda. You are preparing, the dash is removing psoilus, something that's attached to food, for eventual either borer or meraked. He's defining these terms. Hamanafetz is noifetz afruris min ha'oichel. You sort of beat the food to remove dirt from it. Nimtza, so it comes out, zora uborer b'meraked, kulon mavirin psoilus hamarovis ba'oichel. These are removing waste from food, but it's a mixture. Okay, it's not like they're attached to each other. It's not like a peel that's attached to tzricha peel that you have to remove. However, the Yerushalmi states that sorting the outer peels of garlic from the garlic inside is borer. Hain the shachak tuma, those that grind garlic, tuma kad, mefarech bereisha mishum dash. They're liable for this mlach of dash. Kad mevar beklipiyasa mishum borer. When they remove the peels, they're liable for borer. When the Yerushalmi appears to contradict the Bavli, the Rishonim often try to resolve the contradictions, but if this is not possible, it's commonly assumed that the halacha follows the Bavli, not the Yerushalmi. In this case, several Rishonim quote the Yerushalmi and assume that it's accepted as the halacha without raising the apparent contradiction with the Bavli. They do, however, state that the Yerushalmi only prohibits removing the peels when this is not for immediate use. But if you, for example, remove the peel and you're going to use the garlic right away, it would be permitted. One of these Rishonim was the Sefer Mitzvah Gadol, known as the Smag. Me'ahid Yerushalmi, from this Yerushalmi, ein lesser liklof shumim b'tzolim. We shouldn't prohibit peeling garlic and onions lechol alter if you can eat it right away. The Yerushalmi lo ma'ir b'koilef lechol alter. The case of the Yerushalmi that prohibited was not talking about a case where you peel and ate it right away. Lacheno, so that's why it was awesome, because you were like peeling it to gather it for later. Now, the Bir Halacha, right, that's the Chafetz Chaim in the Mishnah Berurah, explains that this distinction is also the key to resolving the apparent contradiction between the Bavli and the Yerushalmi. The Bavli only permits peeling barley when one plans to eat it immediately. Liklof, ve'ein la'akshos al divrei Rishonim, halohema hatrumas hadeshen, ve'asmag, ve'mordechai, shetiku, they quoted the divrei Yerushalmi, and now the coil of chayiv, that the peeling is chayiv, mishum borer, la'locha, ma'adi isa bebeitza, from the Gemara in Beitza, mekalfalei dvisu kasi kasi, right? But the Bavli says that the wives of Rav Chia and Rab did it and put it in cups. Lo mistaver l'chalik ben klipa so'er l'klipa shumim v'tzolim. And it's not logical to distinguish between barley and the garlic and onions. Rather, yeshlomar deshamayr b'daitu lechol alter. It's all based on the fact that if your intention is to eat it right away, then you're allowed to do it. However, the Bir Halacha continues by pointing out that the Rambam does not quote the Yerushalmi, indicating that it's not accepted as a final halacha. And peeling is never considered borer. So the Bir Halacha suggests that this is because the Yerushalmi follows the position that peeling constitutes an act of borer. And the Bavli rejects this in its conclusion, taking the position instead that peeling is always permitted. Ach lepel al Rambam. So it's a wonder that the Rambam Hishmit Haidina Yerushalmi Gamri. The Rambam never quoted the Yerushalmi at all. Lo izkiru klal. V'lulei divrei kodsham shel Rishonim anal. If it wasn't for the words of the Rishonim, nearly liyashe divrei Yerushalmi anal, he would reconcile the difference between the Yerushalmi and the Bavli, ba'oifen na'od, in a very nice way. V'meilai nicha das Rambam shishmitu, and we would understand why the Rambam left it out. So the Gemara, the kolafu b'chla malacha, that initially the Gemara thought peeling is a malacha. V'nuchal lomar dezaya dasa Yerushalmi. Perhaps that was the thought of the Yerushalmi. Aval ufia maskana bavli. The way the maskani ended, where we talked about the two wives that peeled, right? The kol potter mishum malachas machshavas asrator, lo avi zeshum malacha klal. Bafil b'dayt malacha lachas man. It's not really a malacha at all, even if you planted it later. I guess because it's not considered borer when it's attached. Although the Bir Halacha seems to prefer his understanding of Yerushalmi, which leads to the conclusion that peeling is always permitted, he submits to the Smag and others who only permit peeling for immediate use. And that's also the position of the Ramah. On Shabbos, you're not allowed to peel garlic and onions if you're going to leave it for later. But if you're going to peel it and use it right away, then it's permitted.
But you don't have to peel it and eat it immediately. You can put it in the cup. That's what the live. But that's okay.
In order to eat immediately, right? Or let's say put it in the salad.
Because the first opinion was that you actually have to eat it one by one.
Right, but when they put it in the cups, that's obviously, but it's being set up for eating.
Indeed.
The Aruch HaShulchan is bothered by this ruling, as logically peeling does not constitute sorting. And this would be affirmed, appears to be affirmed by the simple meaning of the Gemara and Beitzah. It was also common practice to peel onions and garlic for use later on Shabbos. He therefore concludes that neither the Yerushalmi nor the Ramah actually mean to prohibit peeling. Rather, they are referring to a situation where one grinds a number of garlic cloves together, resulting in the peels becoming detached and mixed up with the garlic. Removing the peels in that situation is indeed considered borer, because now you have a whole bunch of garlic and peels, and now you get rid of the peels. You can't remove the peels, you have to take the garlic, that's the oichel from the psoilos, right? Isra b'Yerushalmi, period. V'nir lani is daiti, he says in his humble opinion, Dahachi perusha, this is how you have to understand. This, in a case where you take many pieces of garlic and grind it together, their peels fall, the heads fall. Then you have like the peels mixing with the garlic itself. And the guy goes in and removes the peels. That's what Yerushalmi meant. Sheboirer. Ukisheborer me'ashumim kol haklipas chai mishum borer, right? If you remove the peels, you're going to be chayv borer. Aval misha koilev kol shum vado. If you're peeling onion by onion, the choyte charosh, the koilev haklipa k'mo shoyzim bebitzolim, and you cut the head, remove the peel, so then there's no dash and there's no borer. Ein bezelo dishav lo bira. Like we do every day on Shabbos. We peel onions and garlic one by one, just like we eat nuts and almonds. You also open up the walnut, throw away the klipa, and eat the nut. Avi borer. So to do many at a time, that would be borer. For usher. If you don't eat it right away. Who can make it more mefreshes? That which the Smag and the Truma and the Ramah quoted this, it goes against a mefurish gemara. They're not referring to peeling and leaving the peels by itself. If the peels mix up with the onions themselves, that's a problem. The understanding of the Aruch HaShulchan is consistent with the position of Rabbeinu Chananya, quoted above, that bor does not apply to items that are attached. Rav Ovadia Yosef also rules it according to Rabbeinu Chananya, but limits the leniency to peels that are firmly attached, like peels of apples and oranges. In the main text, Rav Ovadia writes explicitly that peeling garlic or onions is only permitted for immediate consumption, as these peels are not firmly attached. This distinction also resolves the apparent contradiction in the Bavli and Yerushalmi, as one could suggest that the Bavli only permits peeling barley because the husks are firmly attached. Says Rav Ovadia, "Hakolev tapuchim or tapuchi zav." If you peel apples or oranges, lashkoliyot or grapefruits, or malafafon, pickles v'kishuin or cucumbers, bevadai de lo shaykh bo isur bor, there's no bor. Kivan shaklipa muchuberes bo mamish. It's not a mixture. Since the peel is very firmly attached, it's one thing. Kos Rabbeinu Chananel, Umari Barceloni, Va'aruch v'meiri de lo shaykh b'rei b'kach. These are all Rishonim. The Mari from Barcelona.
Yeah.
As we saw above, even those who maintain that peeling can constitute bora permit peeling for immediate use. The Bir Halacha questioned this, as usually even sorting for immediate use is only permitted if one removes the food from the waste. To resolve this difficulty, he explains that it's impossible to leave the peel intact while removing the food. Removing the peel is deemed an inherent part of eating and therefore not considered bora when performed at the time of eating. So that's now sort of a new concept, which the Mishnah Berurah resolves for us. Right? Because if you're peeling a banana or an apple, and for you don't want to eat the skin, and you consider it a psoilus for you, we're supposed to take the food from the psoilus. Here we're removing the psoilus from the food. Right? And according to the way the Bir Halacha quoted those Rishonim, it is borer. It should be litzra fil alter. Why should we be permitted this permit that we gave that if you eat it right away you can do it? Why? You're removing the waste and leaving the food. And if you remove, let's say the watermelon seed, if you're going to eat it right away, you're chayiv boyer. Near the kiven the yefsher binyan acher. You can't eat a banana without taking the peel off. That's how we eat it. Lo mikri psolos mitoch achal. It's not defined as waste removed from food. The whole point of it is to eat the inside. But you can't, even when you remember when we remove the watermelon from the seed, you have to eat it right away. You can't do it and then save it for 5 hours from now. So he's saying the same thing. You're going to peel a whole bunch of bananas and leave it over. You can't do that. You have to eat it right away. The Magen Avraham writes that peeling apples is no different than peeling onions, and it's prohibited when done for later use. Right? But the Pri Megadim questions this, as apple peels are usually eaten together with the fruit, and thus an apple and its peel should be considered one food type. Removing the peel, therefore, should not be border. Tzarchiyun, says the Pri Megadim. On the Magen Avraham, the klipas at tapuchim rov oil mochlim. Most people eat the peel when you eat an apple, so it's one thing. Below atchak, it's without difficulty. So therefore, he wants to say that to peel an apple, and you're going to leave the apple to eat later, it's also okay. The Shmir Shabbos Hilchos suggests that the Magen Avraham may agree with the Pri Megadim that a peel that is generally eaten is not considered a different food type and may be removed from the food on Shabbos. He merely believed that most people do not eat apple peels and ruled accordingly. People's tastes change. How children are trained how to eat something. Maybe in the Magen Avraham's time, they all peeled their apples. Who would eat it? How about growing up? We ate baked potatoes, but I didn't necessarily eat the peel. We always in our home we just ate the potato. Later on, like Susie, she trained me to eat the peels too. But it's how you eat is very much something. Did you guys eat peels of potatoes when you were growing up?
Yeah.
You did.
Yeah.
All the time.
I'd say.
After you finish eating the inside, you put a little
No, I understand, but that was not, my mother, they were Yekish, maybe it was a Yekish thing.
The best part.
I don't remember mashed potatoes ever coming with peels.
No.
No, that they took off the
Like
video.
French fries. don't
No, but a baked potato,
Baked potatoes.
No,
But
but
I-
some places will mash the potatoes and put them back in.
Yeah, the baked potato, you eat the peel.
say it again, Mario?
When you eat a baked potato, normally you eat the peel as well.
I'm saying, did you do that as a child too?
Mm-hmm.
See, I don't remember eating that as a
They
child.
didn't have it in Poland.
No, it was not Poland, it was Germany. So Poland is a land of potatoes. Germany too, so I don't know, maybe the Yekish were different, I don't know. Yesh liyashiv da mogen avram svirle, gam ken kedasa prima godim, el shadaitu he, shein rov nera machlikum slepuchim. In Amon Avram's time, he felt people didn't eat the apple peel. He would admit. Now, Rav Moshe Feinstein steps in here, claims that even the Pri Megadim merely raised a difficulty with the ruling of the Magen Avram, but did not mean to dispute the conclusion. He adds that, in fact, there is no significant difficulty, as even removing an edible peel is considered borer if one does not want to eat it. And this is therefore prohibited unless done for immediate use. Rav Moshe is saying that the Pri Megadim really doesn't argue with the Magen Avram. We're talking about the people didn't want to eat the peel. They wanted to get rid of it. It's not a big mila that you can eat it, given the oyster because he doesn't want to eat it. That's why Rav Moshe sees that the Magen Avram is correct in asring if you don't eat it right away. What about removing bones from fish? A related question can arise when eating fish that contain inedible bones. These bones are usually attached to the fish, but unlike peel or skin, it is sometimes possible to avoid removing them by just removing the meat of the fish from around the bones. The Bir Halacha quotes the Maimon Mordechai, who writes that one must be careful not to remove the bones. It means you have to eat the fish around the bones.
This is why you felt the fish wasn't there.
That's right. No, that's
The
true.
rabbi said.
That's
Yeah,
true.
it is, it's
Yeah.
true.
It's absolutely true.
Let's just see footnote 23, where Rav Moshe discussed the Pri Megadim. Rav Moshe permits removing skin from chicken, even if one does not intend to eat the chicken immediately, explaining that the skin and the meat of chicken is all one item. But the Orchos Shabbos observes that this ruling appears to be based on the assumption that everyone eats the skin. And in places where this is not the case, this leniency would not apply. Okay. So the Bir Halacha, V'reiti b'sefer Maimon Mordechai, who's an achron, shekosav al sif zeh, v'zeh l'shono, this is what he said, mikan nira borer, d'masha nogim b'sudas gedolos v'chayotzi. I see that in big meals, it's a practice, likroa hadag, migavod, they opened it up from its back, u'lasir shedra, to remove the spinal column, shebe'emtzad. But yesh l'zar b'Shabbos min lasos came, you shouldn't do it on Shabbos. Removing the bones, and you're chayev. I feel about it if you eat the fish right away. Leave the bones in and eat the fish around it. When you eat meat, you shouldn't throw out the bones of the meat. It means a bone has some meat on it. You should eat the meat off the bone and then throw the bone away.
And the risk here with the fish is bones, eating a bone can be very dangerous, and where they're suggesting to do it, it seems to me to have a high risk of you're gonna have a real health issue. I wonder about that.
I'm thinking about a smoked whitefish, because in general, we don't, we have fillets.
You have the carp.
Well, the carp, but it's not, but he's talking about a whole skeleton. So when you
Oh.
bought smoked whitefish, that's a whole fish. And and then you fillet it open, then that spinal column is behind there.
Yeah.
But we just picked out the food of the fish from it. So he's talking about don't throw out the bones. Elik b'derech achila.
Yes.
V'osu shein alav basar. He says the bones that don't have meat on it, ayigabo. Don't even touch the bone. Ela yochel basar v'atzomos. Eat the meat, leave the bones behind. V'achar kach kashlichem im yitzad kanashor. Then you throw it out. The question of whether the bones may be moved on Shabbos in light of the prohibition of muktzeh will be addressed in a later volume. Understand why if you added like mark bones into a soup or chulent, you've designated it to be used to give flavor to the soup. Why they would be considered muktzah, I have no idea. Right, as long as you designate something before Shabbos for use, it's not muktzah. Maybe.
Well, I think what we're saying is if you eat you need, let's say, a drumstick. Once you eat the drumstick and only the bone is left, that part is muktzah. It's the bone that's the issue, not the kind of chicken bones you put in soup. But this is you've now created a new entity, which is the bone without.
Then you can't move. You can't even throw it away because you're moving it.
That's the issue. Yeah.
However, the Bir Halacha observes that many are not so particular to avoid removing the bones. He then writes that there is some justification for removing the bones immediately before eating the fish, or even just before the meal. He explains that this may be similar to peeling fruit, because you can't get to the fish like Yaakov said, it's dangerous. And also mentions views that board does not apply to items that are attached. First of all, the Chofetz Chaim says nobody's worried about this. He says the oilam is eating fish, and they're not careful about this.
Because they have food to eat.
He's going to find merit as to why the people do it, and it's not a problem. It's just tikkun oichel. It's not a real malacha. I feel like when you're peeling, it's like some smell of butter. Even you're going to eat it right away. We talked about all garlic and onions. After gam kli poop soul. So he wants to say, just like by garlic and onions, if you peel it and eat it right away, it's not a problem. It's the same thing here. Even someone who's removing the bones from the fish, I'm not going to protest. You can do it even before the meal. Who's considered like eating a banana. You can't get to the food without removing the peel. But to do it for hours later, like big meals, then these are bones that have meat on it. So this is what I was referring to, Yaakov. That means, what are bones without meat doing in there? Because you put bones in there for flavor, but then it shouldn't be muktzah because you designated it for the flavor. That's what. No, Yaakov raises a different problem. Let's say you finish eating you have all these bones in your plate. So now you've created something new. It's like a noilad.
Right.
Maybe it's muktzah. So that's later on. We're going to deal with that. Again, I don't think Lemais is a problem. So I've never seen anybody worry about that. The Chazon Ish rejects this Bir Halacha, this justification, maintains instead that whenever it is possible to remove the fish from the bones, only this method can be considered an inherent part of eating. He says, B'Mishnah Berurah, Tzadad, he sort of leaned lahatir lahotziat samos ben adamim. He permitted removing the bones, koydem asuda, even before the meal. V'dama oto, he compared it lekiluf b'tzalim, to peeling onions, the mutar, la'alter, as long as you can eat it right away. Afal gav, the noitel apsoilis, even though you're not taking the food, you're taking the waste. The Lonira came. So the Chazon Ish says, I don't see the comparison. The Vadai Shani Hasam She'en Sham Shtei Drachim. Aval Dogim Vatsamos, the Yesh Bo Shnei Drachim. See, there is no other way to eat an onion unless you peeled it. Okay? But here, the Chazon Ish is timing. You have two ways of eating it. You can eat the fish from within the bones, or you can remove the bones and then eat the fish. So since you have an alternative, suggest eating the fish instead and not remove the bones. Eat the meat off the bone. Mutach basar. Hareza kishar psoilis. By taking the meat from the psoilis, it's like anything. The only time you're allowed to boil or to do it right away is to take the food from the psoilis. Now, this may resolve Yaakov's issue. Small bones, pulling with the right hand, pulling with the left, even removing the bones is permitted, because maybe you have no other alternative how to do it. The Shmir Shabbos Kilchasa writes that ideally, one should either spit the bones out from one's mouth or eat the meat from the bones. However, when other options are impractical, one may rely on the lenient opinions and remove the bones immediately before consumption. You're going to eat meat that have bones, or fish with spines. Also, don't remove the bones, or the spines, you should put the food in his mouth, or with the waste, i.e. with the bones. Then you can remove the bone from your mouth. Let's say he's an istinus, he's finicky, it's not polite. So just hold the bone, and eat the meat. I'm a fan, that's what I do. I know what he's talking about, sticking the whole bone in your mouth.
It's weird.
Huh? But now, let's say you can't even do that. So we have lenient versions. You want to remove the spinal column before the meal, you can. But do it right when you're going to eat it. In contrast to these opinions, we are raising Rav Ovadia Yosef rules in accordance with the view that board does not apply to items that are attached. Accordingly, he writes that removing bones from the fish is permitted in all circumstances. Mutar livor b'Shabbos atzamos hadakim shebetoch hadakim. Now you notice, this is Rav Ovadia. Many times Rav Ovadia will argue, will give a psak, let's say for Sfardim, but he's not doing that here. He's giving his psak, and he's differing from the Mishnah Berurah and from the Chazon Ish, right? Mutar livor b'Shabbos atzamos hadakim shebetoch hadakim. Shekein derech achiloso, because that's how you eat it. It's not even viewed as removing waste from food. Now, let's say bones have separated from the fish, or let's say bone that's in your plate. You shouldn't take the bones and remove them from there. Just push them off to the side.
Footnote 26 deals with Harold's watermelon seed question.
The Shmir Shabbos Kilchos adopts a similar leniency to removing seeds from watermelon and the like when necessary. Since it's very difficult to eat watermelon without removing the seeds, one may remove the seeds immediately before placing the piece in one's mouth. These leniencies are especially pertinent for children. This may be unsafe to allow children to eat these foods. Right? You can get appendicitis. The seed gets stuck into the opening of the appendix. Now, what about peelers? We have seen that the poskim differ as to whether bora applies to peels and other waste that is attached to the food one wishes to eat. Therefore, another application of this dispute exists regarding the use of a peeler. Those poskim who maintain that peeling constitutes borer, unless done immediately prior to consumption, such as the Shmir Shad Kalchasa, also prohibit the use of a peeler, at least for fruits and vegetables, that cannot be eaten together with the peel. According to those poskim, a peeler is an example of an implement designed for borer, and its use negates any possibility of permitting peeling by considering it an inherent part of eating. If most people, let's say you're talking about something, most people don't eat the peel. You can remove it with your hand. Let's say a knife or some kli or fork that's not made to peel it. So you can peel eggs, you can peel bitzolim, you can peel tapuchi adam muvushalim, cooked potatoes, bananot, v'chein naknik, and I guess sausages, a filu b'sakin, even with a knife. Achlo b'kliyam yuchad lekach, but not a peeler. However, according to the view that peeling does not constitute borer at all, one may use a peeler, and it would not be considered an implement designated for borer. Let's see footnote 27. The Shmir Shabbos indicates that one may use a peeler to peel fruits or vegetables that can be eaten with the peel, such as apples or tomatoes. However, poskim debate the status of cucumbers and whether these are considered to have edible or inedible peels. Well, we eat the peel of cucumbers all the time. Rav Yosef Tzvi Rimon writes that there is basis for being lenient about them, while others write that one may not use a peeler for cucumbers. See the response of Machzeh Eliyahu, who does not permit using a peeler at all. It seems that in Israel, cucumbers are more likely to be eaten with their peel, while in the United States, the peel is often removed. Okay.
It's the case.
Huh?
That's really not the case. Everybody eats cucumbers with peel. There may be some who don't, but the vast majority of people think they.
According to the view, yeah. So we said, Rav Yitzchak Yosef rules accordingly. That he adds that one who is stringent will be blessed. Those that permitted peeling fruits and vegetables off the maklev, which is a peeler, which is specifically designed for peeling. There are those who are matir, but v'machmer is a tevel of bracha. Although we saw that Rav Avadia Yosef permits removing any firmly attached peel on Shabbos, even for later use, and writes that there's no doubt about this leniency, Rav Yitzchak Yosef writes only that those who are lenient in this regard have poskim to rely on. This explains why this leniency regarding a peeler is stated less emphatically. It's worth pointing out that this volume of the Yalkut Yosef was published in 1994, long before the relevant volume of Chazon Avadia was published, 2012. After the more lenient ruling of Avadia Yosef was published, it's possible that Rav Yitzchak Yosef has revised his opinion accordingly.
You can ask them.
You could.
That's the guess.
Filtering drinks. Removing impurities from a drink would seem to be another example of removing waste from food, which is prohibited on Shabbos by any means. However, if people do not usually mind consuming a drink together with the impurities, the act of filtering is not considered significant enough to constitute borer and is permitted. This leniency first appears in a Mishnah Masechta Shabbos, although the Mishnah appears to require the use of an unusual type of filter. Umesanin in a sayayin, you filtered wine, besudrin with handkerchiefs, uvikfifa mitzris, it's like an Egyptian basket. So the Gemara permits the use of a strainer when filtering clear liquids. Amar zeri noisin adam yain solul, a person could put clear wine, umayim, so clear water, l'toch hamishmeris b'Shabbos, into a strainer, ve'ena choishesh, and there's no problem. Aval achurin lo, but if the fluid is like turbid, if it's milky, you couldn't. Meisar shemegam le'aloymer, tarid adam chavis shel yayin, you can stir a barrel of wine, yeno shmar v'nos l'toch hamishmeris b'Shabbos ve'ena choishesh, and you can put it in a strainer, not be concerned. Is that so? That's so, but that's clearly murky. Tirgum Aziri, Ben Agito Shani. That when the wine is not, it's just like grape juice. The wine is not yet fermented, it will remain murky even after filtering. The Rashba clarifies that the Mishnah speaks of filtering murky liquids and therefore restricts the leniency to non-standard filters. Filtering clear liquids is permitted even with a strainer, whereas filtering liquids containing solid sediment, even in unusual manner, is prohibited, as that constitutes a clear act of removing waste from food. Says the Rashba, Masarin Nisayan Bisudrin, they used cloths. Perush Yain Achor, we're talking about murky wine. The Yafshal Lafarsh Shmorim, we can't separate the sediments to Hayain Ktani. Vavel Pishem Shane, you've changed the you're not using a normal filter. Kivin Shuhu Boirer Gomer also, it's real boirer. V'chein Yafshal Loimer Yain Solu, the Imkena Fil Mishmerish, Shari Kaziri. It can't be that it's the Mishnah is talking about clear because it's always permitted. We're talking about cloudy wine. The kivin the efsham nishtaya hechin, you can drink it this way. Ain't kan mishum borer. The kivin to make the meshanik tzas, you've made a little shinoi because you're doing it besudrin with cloth. Sorry. The Ran explains further that most people are not particular about clear liquids and drink them without filtering, whereas most people do filter that are slightly murky.
I don't understand this, in murky wine, since it's possible to drink it as it is. Well.
People will drink it.
Yeah, but, any bar item, you pick one fruit out of another, you can, one is.
So if people are- If
you can eat
people
it.
are not makpid on it, so then lechura, it's not an issue. It's not an issue of psoilus from oichel.
Well, but that's true, let's say you have, meat and chicken, and you don't like the meat, you pick out the chicken, because you like chicken. We've said before, what's less desirable to you is considered psoilus. It's the same thing. It's possible to eat both of them. It's possible to eat both the chicken and the fish and the meat. You
Yeah, but
just
what
don't
if
do it.
what if somebody doesn't drink yain that is ochor at all? He won't drink it.
Well, it might be people who don't eat chicken. I mean, I don't see the point that treat it as it is, because a lot of substances that Boer applies to, you can eat it as it is. You just don't want to. I don't get that point.
And so the Ran says, in fact, that people are not particular and they clear liquids and drink them without filtering, but most people will filter liquids that are murky.
So if you have orange juice with pulp in it.
Yeah, but people like that.
Okay, but now.
People,
all
but
people like.
But why today, for example, you would in the stores it says oranges with pulp.
Okay,
Buy it.
so you go to someone's house, they give you
Oh.
orange with pulp, and you don't like the pulp. What do you have?
You're gonna
Shabbos.
drink it or leave it. You're not gonna strain it there at the table.
You have
strainer on
strainer.
here.
You provide strainers with your iron space?
So the Ran says the kivan that slulim heim ruvayu the inchi lo kapti behu. If you're talking about clear liquids, most people are not makpid. Mutter lo says oisnafil, you can put it in a sip to make it even more clear. But avachu in low, but not murky ones. The afagav the efshar the mishasasi, you can drink it that way. Kivan the ruvayu the inchi kapti behu. Most will they're makpid on that. Dafka yedei shinui. So therefore, if you're going to filter it, you need a shinui in the filter. Dainu besudra and a kvifa mitzvahs. Yain shu achol gamri. And if it's completely murky, nobody will drink it. Then you wouldn't be able to use any kind of filter. So, in summary, according to the Ran, there are three categories of liquids regarding borer. Clear liquids that most people drink without filtering may be filtered normally to make them even more clear. Murky liquids that most people filter but can be drunk without filtering may be filtered using an unusual filter. And liquids that have a lot of sediment and they're too murky to be drunk may not be filtered. Now, the Rambam writes that one who uses a strainer for any kind of filtering violates a biblical prohibition. The only leniency he gives is to use an unusual filter, and only for wine without sediment or for clear water. So he's much more machmir. I'm a shadmer yain or shemen if you're straining wine or oil or mayim v'chein shar mashkim b'mishmer shlan chayiv. The filter that's specifically used for either wine or oil or it's miyuchid, you can't use that. But if wine doesn't have sediment or mine sulin, you can use sudrin, you can use cloth, or whatever that is. So you're trying to make it really, really filtered well. Although the Gemara permitted the use of a strainer to filter clear liquids, the Beis Yosef explains that according to the Rambam, this is not referred to a standard strainer. You have to use these cloths or baskets. The Gemara merely explained that the leniency of the Mishnah applies only to filtering clear liquids. The Shulchan Aruch ends up quoting both views. He says, Yainu Maim Shem Tzlulim, wine or water that's clear. He says, Mutter l'sanein b'mishmeres, you can filter them in a regular filter. Says the Ramah, Aval b'sheyesh bo kismin dakin, even though they're little chips of wood, hovrin lishtos blavach, you could drink it anyways. Remember, he's in Poland. Aval b'suder, yeah, because it's in Krakow, it's in Poland. Aval b'suder, now, to use a cloth, so that's another problem. Mayim osr mishum libun. You're going to whiten the cloth. It's like you're cleaning the cloth. It's like you're doing laundry. The yain v'shar mashkim mutter, but wine, yes, you could use the cloth. V'mei machurim, but if the fluid starts off murky, so bein mayin bein yain osr. He says ula Rambam. He quotes us the chumrah of the Rambam. B'mishmes osr afilu mayin v'yain sulim, even for clear water and wine. V'afilu b'sudin lo yitir elo b'tzlulim v'alo b'achurin. Cloths, they only permitted clear. The Bach disagrees with the Ran regarding liquids that most people drink without filtering. He argues that the language of Zehir in the Gemara implies that a strainer may not be used for murky liquids, even if most people drink them unfiltered. Near dimidam Zehir yain solo maim tzulin mashma dafka tzlulin. That's clear. Avalachurin also serving mishmeres. It's always going to be prohibited. Afilu ruba de inshi koshasilu, even if most people drink it that way. Kivin to mi ute kapti. There are people who are makbid, ikemishim borer, it would be borer. V'lo shari, it's not permitted. Elot sol legamri, unless the liquid is really clear. Ve'enim sanam mishmeres, and you're not using a real filter, you're using cloths. Element nektzas kismin, a little bit of chips, or straw, kashim sachim, or inami kadesh yitzoli, or you want to really get clear filtered. Udelo karan, the ba'achor davka echa de ruvayu inchi lo shasulei, hachi huda asur mishmeres. According to the Ran, he says only when most people don't drink it is it asur mishmeres. V'lo shoyel b'sudin of krifa. Alma de'echad ruvayu inchi shasulei hachi afilu mishmeres shoy. The Ran permitted that if most people drink it in that status, you could do it even with a sieve. The lomash machim is zir dikon yain sol. But the Bach disagrees. How do we paskin? The Mishnah writes, and with this we'll end today. I didn't realize. Why don't we leave this Mishnah Berurah for next week? So no. So we'll review. It'll give us a review of the murky business. Yeah. Okay. Any comments, questions? No. Okay. Next week, same time, same station, 8:00.
All right, oh, yeah.
Tiny chips of wood, I don't care if you live in Poland, how could you eat